and welcome to podcast number 46 of the Relationship Restaurant. We are Poppy and Jeff Spencer. Thrilled to have you with us here. And today we're going to talk about how to identify red flags in a toxic relationship and what you can do about it. Poppy and I think there are 6 key markers that could be red flags to toxic relationships. Right, Poppy?
Right. And here on the Relationship Restaurant, we talk about heart-healthy communication, which, of course, is the foundation for all relationships. It always starts with that, having that vulnerability to open your hearts and minds to talk with your partner, to your sibling, to your boss, to your parent, to your child. It all starts with that courage to do so. So, a lot of times toxic relationships come down to our ego, and there's common defense mechanisms that we use, and we put them into place, and we don't like to be challenged on things. And sometimes it's even more than that, though. Sometimes toxic relationships have a long history from where they originate. So we just want to make sure that when we get into those messy interactions with our spouse, our significant other, friends, or coworkers, that we can identify those things. And so from our research, we discovered 5 themes that point to causes and signs of a toxic relationship.
And the first one of these is, well, you're just not well-suited. Pretty straightforward thing. It sounds very obvious, doesn't it? But for some people who've grown up in an environment where conflict is always embraced, and this is another big discussion point Poppy and I have. How many of us, how many children have grown up in environments where there's just lots of conflict?
And so, it's so comfortable.
Because that's all they know. That's what they've learned. And they will carry that into their own relationships as they move forward.
And it becomes like a default setting for so many people, and they use that default setting to then approach all their relationships from this place of wanting drama, wanting conflict, highly charged energy. They're so used to it that when things are more passive, it's very uncomfortable. And it seems like counterintuitive, right?
Mm-hmm. It does. But this is one of these things that we've so many times when we're talking about even some of our relationships of our past, with many of the clients we've worked with and many people we see, they often will say, how did I not see these things? And there's so many red flags that we often just ignore, or we say that's not important and I'll be able to deal with that. They'll be able to change. They'll be able to get over it. So a lot of those things we just easily push aside.
So what we can do with some of those things is we can say both of us are Myers-Briggs certified. We like to be able to help clients understand their personality preferences. Again, these are just preferences. But if you understand
your own,
and then that of your partner's, you can really have a rich conversation and communication going.
And this is one of these things we often point to because the people often don't consider these kinds of things when they enter into relationships. And the other thing that we always talk about, because we're very proud of this tool, the emotional clock, it is an easy tool to use to help you bring up any of these topics. Because if there are areas in a relationship, well, there are conflicts and questions you have, and it's not a problem. If there's things you have to try to get over, the emotional clock gives you a methodology to comfortably point towards something and not talk about the other person, to talk about yourself and say, here's what I'm feeling about these things. So it's a great tool to bring out hard things to talk about.
So the emotional clock is something that we developed when writing our best-selling Amazon book, 1 Billion Seconds. The emotional clock has 12 settings on the traditional analog clock face. The right-hand side has 6 that are pretty much disempowered or discouraged side of the clock. They have more the negative emotions. The left side has more the positive emotions, those things that we always want to reach for in our relationships. And we'll tell you a little bit about this later at the end of the podcast about how you can use the emotional clock to jumpstart those really important conversations, especially when there's underlying tension or conflict.
There's another thing, Poppy, that we always talk about that it's so important to understand are the 5 love languages that we all have, written by our friend Gary Chapman. And it's so important to understand this because I think I always point to myself and my own gender. I think men often miss this mark so badly. They think that this is what my wife might like. I've done something to upset her, and I can just run out to a local grocery store and buy some flowers, and that'll get me out of trouble. And
we've even done this and shamed somebody in the grocery store aisle.
Yeah, I'll always see a guy with a pile of flowers and go, well, you must be in trouble, huh?
What'd you do?
What'd you do? It's like, oh, God, she's all mad at me. So all kidding aside, it's very important to understand those things, because if gift-giving is not something that will make
not
a high priority for your person of the 5 love languages, but they're much more into acts of service, for example.
Or touch,
or time. They want you to actually spend time sitting and talking with them and trying to get through it. So
another area that could lead to toxicity in the relationships is something called micro-cheating. And this is kind of a buzzword that's been around lately. And these are relationships that seem benign, they seem harmless at first, but they could grow into something else. And Lindsay Hoskins, who's a Maryland-based couples therapist, calls micro-cheating a set of behaviors that flirts with a line between faithfulness and unfaithfulness. So a lot of this could be emotional cheating. It could be looking up an old lover or ex or person of the opposite sex or the same sex on social media, maybe engaging them in a private chat. These are all things that to one person might seem harmless, but to a committed partner would seem very damaging and
scary.
This
is one thing that Poppy and I are always very open about, is sharing everyone we're talking to and talking about. We always think it's a very key indicator of how a relationship is doing. If the phones, if your iPhones, whatever phone you choose to use, that's something you protect and guard and don't want the other person to see, that's a troubling sign. You should be very easy and open. Poppy and I share our phones regularly and never have a thought about who might be communicating to us and what's going on, because we're completely wide open about it and nothing to ever be afraid of. There's no micro-cheating going on.
And especially even on Facebook, when one of us gets a friend request, or LinkedIn from somebody that is just an acquaintance, right, or somebody else, and we don't know them well, we always check in with one another.
Yeah, so did you get a request from this person?
Yeah, I didn't. I really don't know this person. Maybe you're, maybe not. So Hoskins goes on to say, virtually anything from Tinder swiping to flirting with a cute stranger could be considered micro-cheating, depending on the person's values and relationship priorities. But sometimes, with a possible flame, talking with an ex-partner and growing too friendly with a coworker is bad. And then another person says, well, maybe it's harmless for me because I'm getting an ego boost. And so that's a really key sign to look at that and go, okay, so why does your partner need an ego boost?
Why you're not getting that from your existing relationship? And this is, again, usually comes back to breakdown in communication. This is where the emotional clock can, again, come in to open up that conversation. People are often afraid to bring up these topics, to say, hey, my needs aren't being met in this way. So they often just avoid the topic entirely, which is never good. That's the kind of thing that leads to a micro-cheating, because you want to try to satisfy that urge, that need elsewhere.
Right. And the other thing, this is an article in Time magazine, by the way, but the other thing that they found, the researchers found, is that they call them, and we're using air quotes here, back burners. And so if you find that you're in your committed relationship, that your person is keeping contact information and touching base with this person that's a back burner person, just in case, it's like, I don't know, we're going to talk about being all in a little bit here, but the success for that, the fix for that, is to obviously have really good communication. But it's not just a one-time conversation. The therapist Hoskins says, she said, you can't just say, okay, good, check this off the list. We had this conversation about micro-cheating and we don't ever have to have it again. No.
You have that conversation again.
Probably for the rest of the relationship.
If you feel that it's troubling you and you feel that it's something that is happening and it's bothering you, then you need to have that conversation again.
And the last thing that she suggests is, when you've had this good feeling, there's no more tension that is palpable between you two, ask the other person in a very vulnerable, gentle way, what was it that made you want to reach out to this person? Or what was appealing or attractive about that? Are you getting something from that interaction that you're not getting in our relationship? And really either ask yourself that question first and then share it with your partner, or discuss, hey, if we have an unmet need in our relationship here, let's brainstorm and see what we can do to fix that. Can we focus on adding something that gives you a spark, that gives you that dopamine hit in our relationship? And if so, let's work on that together. And so obviously it comes back to, again, talking together so that you feel flirty. I mean, I think there was a movie that we saw once about couples that would be out in bars and they dress up alternative costumes and things, and they'd meet each other, and you'd be the raincoat, the trench coat person, and someone else would be the skanky person, and they would put on these roles and meet up and add spice to their relationship.
Right, pretend to be someone else and pretend to be meeting for the first time and have an affair with your wife.
Yes.
Okay, we're going to go on to point number 3, and this is a big one we've unfortunately seen way too much of late. You have unresolved issues and or mental health challenges, and these are so often issues that you do not see early in a relationship, and it's really hard to address these points. And often, it's like a house. People move from one house to another. If you take all the same bad things with you, they keep showing up in the next house.
Right.
Same thing with relationships.
Even if you haven't even unpacked, we call them boxes. You move boxes when you're moving in the moving van, you unload all the boxes. Sometimes even the boxes don't have to be unpacked for them to infiltrate your relationship with toxicity.
This is something, again, where we see that people often don't address these issues.
They come up in the most inopportune times.
Yeah.
Like the Thanksgiving family dinner gathering or friends and family gathering.
And you'll often not know these things until you're well into the relationship. And if the person who is suffering from some mental illness challenges and having to resolve these things, if they are unwilling to look at it and deal with it, that can be a huge problem. And we often have a lot of people come to us with that as their challenge in their relationship, that the person who they're with has these issues and they won't address them.
Right. And it always comes back to that 4-letter F word. Well, it's not the one you're thinking of, but it's fear. Both sides have fear of approaching the subject, and the person who has unresolved issues or mental health challenges is afraid that if they expose themselves, if they become vulnerable, that they too will lose their partner. And so they try and keep a mask and a lid on all of that, and it just makes the relationship more toxic.
Mm-hmm. Item number 4 in our list, there is a breakdown in communication. And we see this so often. I'd say this has happened to you and I a little bit the past couple of days here, where life just gets in the way. There's a lot of things that happen in life, and a lot of things that come up, and it can just get in the way of your normal interactions, normal communications, and your relationships can become unattended, and you just let other things rule what you're doing.
Right. If we can go back, one of the fixes for that is Gary Chapman's book, also his book, called The Apology Language. And it's so important, that apology language, that you understand your partner's and your own apology language. For me, Jeff and I have different apology languages. Mine is restitution. I want to know exactly what's going to happen next time, how it's going to be made up to me, whatever. Jeff is just a simple, I'm genuinely sorry, that's okay. Yeah, that's not enough for me. I need more.
I guess that says I'm fairly easy then, huh?
Yeah,
Is that what it says?
It does. So, but we understand that about each other, so we have to recalibrate our responses to one another.
Okay, item number 5. One of you is a dominance manipulator while the other blindly trusts.
I know. We see this with our clients all the time. And you tend to lack that emotional and mental objectivity. You don't see through the schmoozing and the characteristics of that person.
For example, the narcissist, the person who does a brilliant job of, and it can be the word conning, can be the right thing, con someone into believing this relationship is based on some really solid stuff, and it isn't.
It's so devastating for the partner who blindly trusts and who counts on that person to mean what he or she says and then doesn't. It's just all smoke and mirrors. It's so hard for them to pick up their own pieces of identity that have been put into their partner's trusting basket. And it's a thing that we work with many clients that are unfortunately in narcissistic behaviors. And you don't see it coming because that partner is usually so charismatic, so attentive in the beginning. And then once they've sort of got you, air quotes, they then start dismantling you emotionally, mentally, sometimes even physically. And that abuse is just like this little slow creeping in that happens.
And one of the words here that we said, the blind trust, I think that the critical word there is the blind trusting. It is so important to have trust, vulnerability in a relationship. It's when it is done blindly and you don't see some of the obvious manipulative traits that some of these people can have. That's where you have to be careful of. And these are red flags you have to, again, look for early on and discuss. And it always comes down to a discussion and conversations and questions about what you're uncomfortable with. And they'll bring it up.
And we talk about this a lot with our clients. We take them through an exercise called the art of discernment. And we help them really to examine and scrutinize those behaviors on both their part and their partner's part so that they can understand how they got sucked into some terrible, tension or some terrible, sometimes it's almost like a Stockholm Syndrome situation where they're sucked into that, and it's just very damaging for both of them. Item number 6, one of you has a commitment phobia. This is a huge one that we see.
And that often comes again from if they've been burned, let's say, in the past in a relationship.
Usually abandonment issues are number one on the hit list for people that come to us that have issues.
And they're afraid to ever trust again and get into a relationship because they don't want to get hurt again.
And that embitterment that they have, it's so toxic to both parties, not just the partner in the relationship, but to themselves as well, because it affects their self-esteem, their self-worth.
And we always say it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy, too. If you say, I'm struggling with ever trusting again, and you'll never have a good relationship again if you can't trust. So it's important to get beyond that.
And the ego wants to be right. I used to teach psychology for many years at the undergraduate level, and we used to talk about, do you want to be right or do you want to feel good? Well, the ego wants you to be right, but your heart wants to feel good. But you can't have it both ways. In other words, feeding the ego is fear-based. That's that risky situation, and they say, no, don't do it. And feeding the heart is courage-based. And we always love that because after 14 years of French, courage is a heart-centric, dating back to cour from the Latin and the French, meaning from the heart. So what can we do about it? Here's 5 more signs that indicate a toxic relationship.
They are loneliness, change, and illness is the first. So often our bodies actually will tell us these things through illness. We have many people we've seen that have gone through a lot of serious illness things when relationships are bad. It's the body's way of kind of revolting and saying things aren't right.
And it's like body slapping, It's like, hey, wake up here. Yeah. You're not paying attention. You've ignored all these red flags, and now I'm going to have to take over and be in charge here.
And you should never feel lonely in a relationship. That's a huge sign that things are really off. Poppy and I both know and understand this feeling of feeling terribly alone even though you're in a committed married relationship.
I personally experienced that. Living in the Midwest, it was very cold, and every year I had bouts of either strep throat or bronchitis or both, and I was like, what the heck is going on? And I wasn't caring for myself appropriately in my current relationship, in that old relationship. It was my body's way of saying that. So if you find yourself, even though you had a flu shot maybe this year,
why do I keep getting sick all the time?
It might be your body's way of just nudging you a little bit and saying, hey, maybe we need to sit down, talk to somebody. You certainly can call us. You have a 30-minute free consult with us anytime. So that is, something that's going on. Obviously, if you feel very sick or in physical pain, you need, obviously, to contact your doctor. But anyway, the mind and spirit, you need to take that trifecta of the body, mind, and spirit and make sure that all 3 are being properly attended to.
The second one we like to talk to here again is isolation. And we all have felt these things when you have that pit in your stomach and you just can't get rid of it. And little by little, your partner, the person you're committed to, is finding more and more distance from you and pushing you away from your tribe and isolating you. That is a real big problem. We see this so many times where people are acting so differently, and they say, well, why are they acting so differently? And they're pushing away from family and friends. It doesn't make any sense.
And we've even seen this with clients of ours that when they're even sitting in our office talking with us, and the partner leaves the room to use the restroom, for instance, and then it's palpable.
Relief.
There's relief flushes over the face. They get relaxed. Their body language sinks into the chair, and they're calm. And then that person comes back, and
it's like a shadow.
Yeah, it's like this veil comes over them. And so sometimes it could be even critical of if your partner criticizes your family members, your sister, your brother, your best friend, and does little tiny things like, did you ever notice how annoying she is when she talks about such and such? And you find yourself being defensive and wanting to protect that person. And that's it. And then the other thing that they can do is that they'll say, you know what, let's move out to the country. Let's move to this rural area. But you're a city person. You grew up in the city or in the urban areas, and suddenly you're like, well, okay, I want to please my partner, so we're going to move out there. And then you're isolated. You're all alone. And gosh, the old farmhouse that we're going to renovate doesn't have good cell service, so I can't even talk to my friends and family or my groups, my BFF. And so notice if that kind of thing happens, that might be a red flag that you're in a toxic relationship.
The number three proof that you're in a toxic relationship is distractions are prevailing in your most important relationships. And we now have this wonderful tool, the cell phone, that has everything on the entire planet you'd ever want to know on it, and every game you can play, and everything you can look up, and that is, we see so many times relationships are being damaged because it's far more interesting to be on the phone than to be with a person that you're theoretically supposed to be in love with in a committed relationship. And that's a huge sign that there's something's wrong if the phone is more important than the relationship.
And so we often encourage people, as many other people have done, to have device-free moments in your day, especially after work or whatever, to put those devices away and have 20 minutes of just like a debrief, a connection debrief.
Mm-hmm.
You're reconnecting with your partner, you're plugging in, you're recharging your relationship while you're charging your phone in the other room. That's a great way to do it. The other thing that does sometimes happen when conversations become few and far between with people and they get more superficial, and maybe even intimacy and sexual intercourse has declined. And the other thing that happens in that is that when people tensions then rise, escalated voices happen, and people get into what we call gunny sacking, which is a term that, imagine a burlap bag filled with all the issues and challenges and conflicts and grievances you have with your partner, and every time there's a new something that occurs, a new little blip that comes up in the conflict, one of you opens the bag and dumps out all the past things.
And all those things you thought you had resolved and talked through and had taken care of get resurfaced and hashed out all over again, and very unhealthy behavior.
So then all of your conversations then become gunny sacking motivated, and that conflict just is the mainstay of your
and
relationship.
People will avoid communication because the fear of gunny sacking.
Right.
I'm going to get dumped on if I bring anything up. The burlap sack's going to get dumped all over me again.
All right, well, number 4 of sign of a toxic relationship is if you find control freaks and narcissistic behavior attracted to you. So we talked about this a little bit earlier, that you're drawn to that narcissistic person. The partner listens attentively. They draw you in. You're so excited. You talk about yourself because that's what they want to hear. And then when they do talk about themselves, most often it's with half-truths and lies. And people who like to dominate usually prey on people who are gullible, trusting. And if you have this tendency to openly trust people, know it and own it. And then, as we said earlier, practice that art of discernment. If you have a healthy preference for intuition on your Myers-Briggs, for instance, please pay attention to that. And even if you say to yourself, I don't know, it's just something feels a little off here. Great, find it. I love, if any of you remember the old Madeline books with Miss Clavel, who is the nun with the little French girls at the orphanage. And Madeline wakes up in the middle of the night in like 3 buildings over from where Miss Clavel slept, and she was crying, and but we find out later she has an appendicitis attack. And Miss Clavel, 3 buildings over, sat up in bed and was like, something is not right. And I was like, she did not hear her crying. She just was so tuned into those 12 little girls that she knew something wasn't right.
She felt the disturbance in the force?
Yes, she did. So I always say, have those Miss Clavel moments where you just are so tuned in to yourself and to others that you pick up on that little signal of energy that something isn't right.
Number 5 is a lack of all-inness. And this is, again, Poppy and I love to talk about this, about being all-in. And when Poppy and I rediscovered each other after being apart for 32 years, we both immediately went right to that, this feeling of being all-in. And we know that's the only way a relationship can be complete and fulfilling and wonderful is if you are all-in. You can't have 1 foot in the door and 1 foot out. You have to be all-in. And if you feel you can't do that, then you're probably not with someone you should be with. If you feel you can't commit and you can't be all in, you should be able to be totally open and wanting everything with that person. And if not, something's wrong.
And there's 6 subsets that we came up with the lack of all-inness. The first one, we call it a small R. And this is just like a slow drip of resentment that starts to creep in this relationship. It's not a gush. It starts very slowly, but it does build over time.
And a slow drip will eventually fill a bathtub.
Yeah, and eventually it'll grow and escalate. And so, you don't necessarily see the red flag, but it's there, certainly, if you have that Miss Clavel moment, that you can do that. And a second sign
is that you need to be aware of protect yourself if gift giving makes you groan.
We had some clients that we work with, and it was always just before some of the holidays. One of them was like Sweetheart's Day, Valentine's Day, Christmas.
I have to get another gift. Okay,
and so if that's, especially if their love language, primary language is gift giving, if you find that your partner is groaning or making caustic remarks or sarcasm, that might be a sign
or
that
you feel that way when you have to give a gift.
Right. If you can't come up with something, chances are you're not committed in your relationship, or if you witness that, chances are your partner is not committed.
Another sign of this is if you can't imagine a future. You're struggling talking about, say, a vacation. You're like, I don't really want to take a vacation. I don't want to do those things. If you're making up excuses to not be with someone and not think about and plan a future, that's a problem.
And it's so interesting because a lot of times people do that. They'll go, well, we can't afford it, or who's going to watch the kids? Who will manage the pets?
You can figure those things out.
Yeah, we can't take the pets to the kennel. They don't like the kennel. I want to go to the beach and you want to ski. It's like, well, maybe we can water ski, at the beach. Or, oh, it's just too busy a time, I can't take off of work. So a lot of times, some of those are valid, but sometimes they are merely excuses.
And a fourth is that you like having two big Labradors sleeping next to you, between you and your spouse. That seems to be a comfortable thing. That's a wall that's going to stop all intimacy and be a huge divider. But a lot of people, that happens, and next thing you know, they're comfortable with having dogs in the bed.
And then one of the two partners will go to another bedroom just to get a good night's sleep. And or if they snore, or if they whatever, and suddenly intimacy goes away. A fifth signal that you need to pay attention to on this all-in-this subject is if family and friends begin to walk on eggshells around you. So suddenly you're with your family at a gathering, and you find that your sister and your mom and your dad and everybody's kind of tentative around you. They're very polite, but they don't have that old teasing, nudging, fun stuff that they used to do. And they make trite conversation with you, and maybe you and your college roommate no longer share deep conversations. Some people might be bold, and they might say, hey, is everything okay? And, if somebody says that to you, please embrace that. And even those direct questions with the opportunity to look at your relationship. I understand if at the time, you're at a family gathering, let's say Thanksgiving or whatever, and you're going to say, yeah, everything's fine, and you're going to lie. But please, at a later date, go back and check out what that person is, because that person loves you and cares about you, and they obviously can see what you don't. And lastly, if you've lost your sparkle, this is a huge one here. We notice this. Pull out old happy photos of you and compare them to ones on social media today.
This is something Poppy and I are always fascinated by, looking at old photographs in different times of our life.
And you see this void expression, hollow eyes.
What's wrong with this picture? Why is this person, maybe often yourself, looking so unfulfilled in this picture?
Are you really seeing what you're supposed to see? Are you all in? Are they all in? Maybe they're not. And conversely, you might see old pictures of your ex in old social media photos, and you might see sparkling, happy, whatever, and then you contrast that with the ones that you're in recently.
What's wrong with this?
And you go like, well, wait a minute, maybe my partner isn't all in. Maybe that's another indication that this relationship is toxic. So we always say that the signs are always there. And if you can even take a 3-second pause to allow your mind and heart and body to work together to give you this information, all of your interpersonal relationships will improve. I promise. We believe that healthy relationships don't need protection. But they do need examination, and they do need you to be introspective.
So if you're struggling in one of these toxic relationships or in an unhappy marriage, we can help. To speak with us, and again, we'd love to give you a 30-minute free consultation so we can get to know each other, you can get to know us better, and see if there's a good fit. Call us at 941-586-2911, or you can send a confidential email to Poppy and Jeff at PG, that's PG like Poppy and Jeff, I'm a Jeff with a G, PG at poppyandjeff.com. It's POPPYANDGEOFF.com.
And from now and for the next 6 weeks, whenever you hear this, we are giving away our prize tool, the Emotional Clock. You can download it free on our website, poppyandjeff.com, as Jeff just mentioned, and you'll get a guide that goes with it. You can print out your own emotional clock, and you and your partner can start to have those heart-healthy relationships.
And if you want to learn more about it, give us a call. This is Poppy and Jeff for the Relationship Restaurant. We thank you for joining us.
Bye, y'all.